Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jake here with another episode of Straight Shooting. If you recall my intro video, What is Straight Shooting? I made mention of wanting to make this channel more of a community rather than just a political channel where I trash the other side. I want this to be a place where we can disagree, have a debate, and then walk away as friends and as a united community. Um, Even if you're not necessarily from the United States, I do want you to feel like, okay, I have a place on this channel. I can discuss things and have a good faith argument. Um, because I think good faith debates are at such a premium. You see a lot of name calling and shouting, and you're this, you're that, you're anti this, you're anti that. And I kind of want to make it where politics doesn't have to be about that. Um, there's a lot of young people who are getting into politics, and we're getting kind of taught to hate the other side. And I don't want that to be the society I grow up in and my kids grow up in. I want that to be something that we can start to bring down. I always recall the debate with Ronald Reagan and Walter Mondale as like, wow, that we strayed really far from it when Reagan made that joke that even Mondale had to laugh at. I want debates in politics to be like that again, where we could say, well, I like higher taxes on the rich because of this, and this. Well, I like a flat tax rate because of this, and this. And to do that, I want to talk about more than just politics. I want to talk about business, and I want to talk about video games, and I want to talk about history, all these things that I am passionate about. I want to talk about with you guys and let you guys talk to me about because I think that's something you don't really see a lot of, and I especially in politics, and I want to create that, and I'm striving to create that, and I'm gonna have moments where I might insult the other side. I'm gonna get passionate about it, and I'm gonna try not to, but it's gonna happen. It happens. We're not perfect. None of us are. Um, and we might be in a heated debate in the comment section, all of us, and we might start yelling at each other. But we can let cooler heads prevail and say, you know what, I was wrong for doing that. Um, let's agree to disagree and move on. I think that is the kind of community I want to create, and I hope you guys will join me in doing that. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about something a little bit more lighthearted than politics, and that's going to be video games. I'm an avid gamer. As I said in my initial video, I have a degree in game design, and I'm close to getting my bachelor's in game development. I really enjoy playing games. I sort of enjoy making games, so I want to talk about them because I don't really have a lot of people to talk about them with. So you guys get to be my audience. So specifically, what I'm going to do is I am going to rank the Resident Evil series, as that is my absolute favorite video game series, and I know the most about it, and I'm really excited to rank it and see what you guys think. All right, so here is the tier list that I found online at, you could say, the link. It's tiermaker.com/create/Resident Evil games, blah, 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 blah. So I got Leon and Jill behind me and Nemesis right here. They're going to help me rank it. So I'm going to go from my least favorite games up to my favorite games. And again, this is my opinion. You can have a completely different opinion, and that's fine. But this is my opinion. So we're going to start with the D category. I think the easiest one to put in there is this Operation Raccoon City. Probably the absolute worst Resident Evil game I've ever touched in my life. It's not a game that I can sit there and say, well, there's redeeming qualities about it. I think it was an absolutely trash game. It was boring. It was clunky. I did not enjoy it. I really honestly I have nothing good to say about the game. There's literally no redeeming qualities about it. I wish it was never made. Moving on. I think there is probably only one other game that they have listed here that I would say is in the D ranking, and that is Resistance. Capcom still has an infatuation with this type of game that they got going with Resistance. I will be honest, I didn't play it that much, but I did play a little bit of it. It was really boring, it was really clunky, and it died a very quick death, figuratively. Um, it's the same thing as Operation Raccoon City. I don't see how it has any redeeming qualities. It was absolutely boring. It was clunky. It was not Resident Evil. Um, and I think it took away a lot from the Resident Evil 3 remake. And I, again, don't know why it was made. Okay, so like I said, I think that is probably it for the D ranking. I am going to move on to the C rankings. So, which games do I think belong in there? I'm going to go with probably what's going to be the most controversial, Resident Evil 0. I think of the, fixed camera tank control games, I think this was the absolute worst. Rebecca and Billy were... A lot of people want to see Billy return, and I don't really understand it. He was just like a dull character. He was like... He wasn't really cool. He wasn't like a badass, really. I just never took him seriously, and Rebecca was irritating in that game. She completely changed when you went to the first game in the series. It was so boring. It didn't have the fun-loving characters. I didn't really like the fact that you had to keep discarding your items and then picking it back up. I think item boxes was fine. I don't know why they didn't keep that. I really don't understand what they thought with that game. It was just... I think that's what killed the tank controls and fixed camera games, was that, just because it was so freaking dull. Moving on, and I've been saying dull a lot, I know. Any other that I think belongs in the C ranking? Resident Evil 6. Kind of surprising myself that I put it in the C and not the D, but when you look at Resistance and Operation Raccoon City, Resident Evil 6 isn't that bad. I mean, the Mercenaries mode was decent. The story was pretty good. Wasn't great, but it was all right. I mean, you got the cool cast. You had Leon, you had Ada, you had Chris. I think the biggest star coming out of that was actually Piers. I actually really enjoyed his character. I did not like how they finished the game off with him. I mean, it is an old game, but I'm still not gonna spoil it. I didn't really like the ending for him. I think he was a good character, and maybe they'll figure it out and what to do with it and how to fix it, because that was probably the brightest spot in that game. Looking it through it all, I think that is probably all for the C portion of this tier list. Now we're going to go on to B. I'm going to go a 2-for-1 just because they're pretty much the same game to me. The Outbreak games. They were good. I liked a lot about it. I didn't really get to enjoy them when they came out. They were just mediocre to me. I mean, maybe I would have enjoyed them more if I was in the online community at the time, but they came out when I was still a little bit young. But they were revolutionary for that fact that they were an online multiplayer game, but I think they came a little bit too early. I do think they really deserve a remake because, hello, I mean, online gaming is a big thing. Why Capcom hasn't gone through with that, I don't know. But overall, the things I didn't like was just there wasn't really a story. It was kind of hard to communicate with the other players. I didn't really get to play it that way, but I don't even know how you could communicate really, because there just wasn't like a lot that you could do, I guess. I think in today's environment, those games would be really good, and I don't think there's a lot that they would have to change. So I'm for them remaking them. I don't think they're going to, but I would be for it. Let's see. Any more? Oh, yes, there's a lot more in this. This is probably going to be the biggest section. I'm going to go with Revelations 1 here. Heck, I'll put Revelations 2 with it because, again, very similar games. I really liked Revelations 1 for its main campaign. I think a lot of people dislike Jill in that, but I think she was really well done. I think her face is a little bit messed up in a lot of the promotional work, but overall she seemed like Jill. She played like Jill. She acted like Jill. I enjoyed it. As for Revelations 2, I think the story was a little bit worse for the wear, but I mean, you got to see Claire come back. You got to see Barry come back. I love the story, but the raid mode in that game, everybody brags about the raid mode in Revelations 1, but Revelations 2 raid mode was so much more addicting to me. I guess because you got to play it in multiplayer, I think that's a little bit more fun. I think that's also something that hurt Revelations 1 is the fact that you had the AI in there, and creating an AI that plays like a human is kind of just, it hurts the game. It's either don't have the AI there at all, or let somebody else play with me. It's something that, going back to Resident Evil 0, that I think hurt that game too. You have this computer running around with me, why can't I just play with a friend? Overall, I really love both these games for what they were. They weren't these massive successful Resident Evil games, but I think that they were fun. I enjoyed them, and I tend to go back to them from time to time. Not as much lately, but sometimes I will. Okay, I am going to put Resident Evil 3 Remake in the B list. I enjoyed this game a lot more than a lot of others, it seemed like. A lot of people criticized the way they characterized Jill. They said she was kind of a bitchy character, and she looked like she acted like a teenager, and blah, 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 blah. But I think I enjoyed that. I'll talk about this a little more when I get to that game, but I did not like the way they portrayed Claire in the 2 remake, but I feel like the character that they went with Jill was very similar, but it fit her more because, she's not going to be buddies with these Umbrella people if they, she knows Umbrella is this evil corporation, so she's thinking all the people that work for them are evil guys. So I didn't mind her character. She looked incredible. I love the voice actress, and I just to say I really do enjoy what she's doing, trying to get herself in the community and trying to take over this role. I appreciate her for that. Overall, I think the game where it got hurt the most was Project Resistance being in its way and shortening it. There was way too much content, and I think it could have sat in development for another year and been done much better. I think giving it the B team that they let make it, and I'm not trying to insult the dev team, but they didn't have all the stuff that the Resident Evil 2 remake dev team had, and I think that's a little bit unfair. But overall, I do think it was a good game. I mean, if it didn't have Resident Evil 3 in the title, if it was some other game or Revelations 3, I think people would have enjoyed it a lot more, and it wouldn't have the criticism that it does. But overall, it was a good game. Not great, but good. Let's see. I'm going to put Resident Evil 7 in the B list. I thought of Resident Evil 7 as a game that tried to take a lot of the trends from a lot of the horror games. And I just don't think they did all that well in it. Um, I think there's a lot of things they could have done better, a lot of things that could have been smoother. I wasn't a fan of how little variety of enemies they had. Um, Ethan was incredibly boring as a character in this game. Um, but I will say, as a compliment, holy moly, was the Baker family great. Almost all of them were just great characters. And the good character, Zoe, turned out to be probably the least exciting. Jack was probably next to Nemesis and Wesker, probably the best villain in the series. He was so good. He scares the crap out of you and just pops out everywhere. But I think this game just took a little too much inspiration from other games, and that hurt it. It did have puzzles, I'll give it that. I did enjoy that. It wasn't a terrible game. I think I've come to enjoy it more as time has gone on. But I think it deserves to be in the B section. I'm looking. I'm going to go ahead and put the one that started it all, Resident Evil 1, 1996. I'm going to go and put that in the B section. Um, for its time, it was an epic game. I mean, it's tough to judge it by today's standards because, yeah, obviously it's going to be a lot worse for the wear comparing it to today's games, but overall, it had, for its time, pretty decent graphics. The tank controls and the fixed cameras were incredible ways to keep the tension up. The pre-rendered backgrounds is a good way to make the backgrounds look a little bit more realistic. The game was incredibly well paced. I loved the story. There's just not much I could say bad about it other than judging it by today's standards, where you got, okay, the graphics by today's standards are terrible. The voice acting is awful, albeit funny now. You can crack up at it. But I don't think that's necessarily fair, but if you're ranking it, it's definitely got to be below some of these higher ranked games. And I think the B tier is fair for it. All right, I think that's it for the B tier. Now let's go to the A tier. I am already assuming a lot of people are surprised with some of the games that are left, but I'm going to go ahead and put Resident Evil 2 Remake in the A category because it was a good game. It was a very good game. It was definitely a return to the form of the classic Resident Evil style, but it was also a little bit short. I mean, they cut a lot of cool things like the zapping system, and I wasn't a huge fan of the way they made Claire sound and act. She wasn't this mature 19-year-old. She was kind of like a little immature. She didn't care much about Sherry like she did in the first one. I mean, it just all seemed a little bit, Leon was probably the most like his original self. I hated what they did with Ada. The one quote from her that sticks in my mind is, "It's secret weapon time." I just don't think that's something that Ada would have ever said. So I can't, in good faith, put it in the S tier. But it was a very good game. They did a very good job and were true to the original. But I think they just missed out on being as good as the original by just a smidge. I'm going to go ahead and put Resident Evil 8. Resident Evil Village, whatever you want to call it, in the A category. I actually enjoyed Resident Evil 8 a lot more than I enjoyed Resident Evil 7. Ethan was a better character. The pacing was a lot better. I do think it matches very well with Resident Evil 4. So for the people that like Resident Evil 4, I don't know how you could bash Resident Evil 8. The gameplay was a lot better. It didn't feel as finicky as Resident Evil 7. I think the one thing that was missing was that villain. you had Lady Dimitrescu that everybody fawned over and loved because of reasons. Uh, but but I never really got into the hype of her, and the fact that she was in it for the first hour of the game, uh, that was kind of no fun. I wasn't really a fan of Mother Miranda. I drew a blank on her name. I wasn't really a fan of her as an enemy. Uh, the Duke was great. I loved him. He was hilarious. I actually named one of my puppies after him. His name is Duke, just because that was the only Resident Evil character that I could think of to fit him. But I think Resident Evil Village doesn't get as much praise as it should. It was a well done game. It wasn't. You know, phenomenal. I wouldn't say it was the perfect Resident Evil game, but it was good. It wasn't too actiony. It wasn't too, slow paced for those who don't like the puzzles. I do think having a little bit more puzzles, like the core puzzles, would have been a little bit better. But overall, it was a pretty good game. I enjoyed it. Moving on, I am going to put Code Veronica in the A category. I think Code Veronica is one of those games that's very mixed. I think you either love it or hate it. It was very long. It was very unforgiving. I had to restart it because I didn't have enough ammo for the boss fight where you fight the tyrant. I have found that cheat code that you can kind of get infinite health. Look it up. It's makes the game satisfying if you beat it already. But overall, Claire was in it. It was the last time until Revelations 2 that we saw Claire in a game. It was a good game. I liked it. I enjoyed it. The graphics definitely didn't age very well. Having played it back recently, it's definitely, not the most pretty of the games. But the gameplay was, classic Resident Evil. It had the classic puzzles and the classic story and the characters and everything. But I don't think it was the best of the fixed camera games. I think it was probably just a smidge behind those classic games. Alright, moving on. I'm going to put Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5 in the A category. And I think probably everybody likes Resident Evil 4, so that's probably surprising that I put it lower than most people, but I probably put Resident Evil 5 a little bit higher. So, I think Resident Evil 4 was a little bit more revolutionary. It did a little bit more that Resident Evil 5 just kind of carried on with. But both games, I think, had a cool story. I think 5 actually had the better story. That's why I put 5 with 4, because I think 5 had the better story, but 4 had the better, more classic Resident Evil game. Take Resident Evil out of Resident Evil 5, and people would love it a lot more. It was a great action game. It had the absolute best, I don't care what you say, the best mercenary mode in the series. But 4 was more revolutionary. It was a lot more scary because obviously it took place at night, and I saw the return of Leon. It was a very good game. I always enjoy going back to 4, but you also have Ashley, who probably took this game down like tenfold because she's the most irritating thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I hope they make her less irritating in the remake. But overall, I don't see how people can say, I love 4, but I hate 5. I mean, they're essentially the same game, gameplay-wise, but 5 is just a little bit more action-focused, and the daylight is what kills 5. If it took place at night, I think you would have no way where you could insult it. But people still don't like it. I think it's a pretty good game. I like Sheva. I liked what they did with the dynamic with Chris and Jill, and I I didn't really mind it like a lot of people did. And now we are going to move to the final three: Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2 Original, and Resident Evil 3 Original. So all three of them are going in the S ranking. I am going to straight out admit that Resident Evil 3 is in the S ranking, completely biased on my part. I put it there because that is the first game that I've really, really played. Me and my dad played it, so I have a lot of fond memories of it. But beyond that, you had Nemesis. I mean, come on. He's probably the most iconic monster in gaming. I mean, you think monster, you think Nemesis. With Resident Evil 2, you had the zapping system. You had the introduction of Claire and Leon. You had the introduction of Ada. It was overall just really, really good. It was a great step forward for the series. The voice acting was much more realistic, much more, it flowed so much better. The story felt a little bit more concise and compact. You had, the graphics that improved. The backgrounds all improved. There was more stuff in the backgrounds, more zombies on the screen. It just took what the original game did and just improved on every single aspect of it. And now let's talk about the remake. So the remake did the same thing. It took everything that the original game did, it expanded the game, and bettered everything that the original did. The reason why 2 remake and 3 remake are a step below is because they cut stuff instead of expanding on stuff. And I think that's why they are kind of not looked at as well as the Resident Evil 1 remake. I think the Resident Evil 1 remake is the pinnacle of remakes. If you're going to remake a game, play that and play the original, and that is how you want to remake a game. You take everything that the original did and you expand upon it, and you take the things that might not have been able to be done in the original game and expand upon it. Like, Lisa was mentioned in the original, so they took her and put her in the game and expanded her story. It just added a layer to the game. You had the controls were better. You had the graphics, of course, were better. The voice acting was better, but they also kept the campiness. I liked that. I think 2 and 3 remake sort of decided not to do that. They decided to cut the campiness, and I'm afraid that's what they're going to do with the 4 remake, is kind of cut a lot of Leon's, campy one-liners. And I think that's just not as fun. Like, let's be fun. Let's keep that campiness in it, because it's something that Resident Evil's known for. So, there is my tier list. I know a lot of people are going to hate me for putting Resident Evil 5 so high and putting Resident Evil 3 original so high. I wonder how much people are going to dislike me for my Resident Evil 0 being ranked so low. But overall, I all the games, save for the 2 that I have in the D tier, I enjoyed them all. While Resident Evil 0 and 6 were kind of boring, that's compared to the other ones. But overall, none of the games listed here, again, except for the bottom 2, I don't go back to. I mean, I don't go back to 6 as much as the others, but overall, I go back and play these games occasionally. Though I must say, I have to go back a little bit and say that the DLC for Resident Evil Village and the third-person mode, which is something I was so excited about, was so poorly done. I'm very disappointed in that, but that's not here nor there. Overall, I did enjoy almost every game that they made. Capcom's on a roll. I hope that continues with the Resident Evil 4 remake. Hopefully I could put that in the S ranking when it happens. But overall, I want to see what do you guys think? Which was your favorite Resident Evil game? Which game did you enjoy the most, and which game did you enjoy the least, and why? I think it's going to be really fun to discuss stuff and discuss those topics. I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody. And I hope you all have a blessed day. And thank you so much for watching my video. Please like, share, and subscribe. And have a great day.